There is a moment in the early morning, before the world asks anything of you, before the phone lights up with its demands, before the mind begins its familiar rehearsal of the day ahead. In that sliver of stillness, perhaps you have noticed something. A quiet that lives underneath everything. A peace that was already there, waiting. Not something you created. Not something you earned. Just there. Like the sky behind the clouds. Like the silence between heartbeats. And then, almost without noticing, the thinking begins. The planning. The worrying. The holding on. The mental list of things that need to be done. The concerns about people you love. The quiet calculations about money, health, and time. And that stillness slips away, like water through fingers. Gone before you even realized you had it. Have you ever wondered why peace seems to come and go? Why do some mornings feel lighter than others, even when nothing has changed? Why do certain seasons of life flow with effortless grace, while others feel like walking through mud? Perhaps it has nothing to do with what is happening around you. Perhaps it has everything to do with how tightly you are holding on. The weight of holding on. There is a kind of tiredness that sleep cannot fix. It is not in the body, exactly. It is somewhere deeper. A fatigue that settles into the bones. A heaviness that no vacation can lift. A weariness that comes from years of carrying. Carrying responsibilities. Carrying expectations. Carrying the weight of outcomes you cannot control. Carrying the people you love, even when they do not ask to be carried. Carrying memories of choices you wish you had made differently. Carrying fears of what might happen tomorrow, next month, next year. By the time we reach a certain age, we know this tiredness intimately. We have felt it settle into our shoulders. We have watched it dim our eyes in the mirror. We have noticed it in the way we sigh without meaning to. In the way we lie awake at 3 in the morning, rehearsing conversations that may never happen. In the way we scan the horizon for threats that have not yet appeared. We have wondered, quietly, if this is simply what life becomes. An endless management of things that might go wrong. A constant vigilance against an uncertain future. There is an old image that has been passed down through many traditions. Different cultures, different centuries, yet the same simple truth. A clenched fist holding water. Picture it for a moment. A hand, gripping tightly, trying to hold on to water. The fingers pressed together. The muscles are straining. The intention is clear, to keep the water from escaping. And yet, the tighter the grip, the faster the water escapes. Slipping through the cracks between fingers. Dripping onto the ground. Until there is nothing left but an empty, aching fist. Now picture an open hand. Palm upward. Fingers relaxed. No grasping. Water resting there, gently. Not forced. Not clutched. Simply held. And somehow, more of it stays. Not because the open hand is trying harder, but because it is not trying at all. It is simply allowing. This is not a lesson about water. It is a reflection on how we move through life. For decades, many of us have been taught that strength means control. That wisdom means predicting what comes next. That love means protecting everyone from everything. That responsibility means carrying the weight of the world. And so we grip. We grip our plans, our relationships, our health, our savings, We grip the image of how things should be. We grip the past, wishing we could change it. We grip the future, trying to shape it before it arrives. We grip our children, even when they are no longer children. We grip our identities, even as life invites us to evolve. And somewhere along the way, the gripping becomes exhausting. The very thing we thought was keeping us safe begins to wear us down. The quiet cost of control. Control feels like safety. This is the difficult truth. When we are managing everything, we feel like we are doing something. We feel responsible, engaged, necessary. We are being good parents, good partners, good people. And in a world that often feels uncertain, that sense of control becomes a kind of anchor. Something solid to hold on to when everything else seems to shift. But anchors, as useful as they are, can also hold us in place when the current is asking us to move. They can keep us stuck in harbors when the open water is calling. There was a woman who spent her life preparing for emergencies, preparing for loss, preparing for every possible thing that could go wrong. She kept lists. She made plans. She saved, stored, and organized. She was ready for anything. Or so she believed. But one day, sitting in the home she had so carefully prepared, she realized something. She had spent so many years getting ready to live that she had forgotten to actually live. The emergencies she had prepared for mostly never came. The losses she feared were often different from the ones that arrived. And all those years of preparing had not made her feel safe. They had made her feel tired. Tired of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Tired of scanning the horizon. Tired of carrying the weight of futures that never happened. There was a man who spent his life building a career, building a family, building a home. He was good at it. People admired his dedication, his attention to detail. He could anticipate problems before they arose. He could fix things before they broke. His children grew up secure. His wife never worried about money. He had done everything right. But as the years passed, he began to notice something strange. The more he managed, the more there seemed to be to manage. The more he controlled, the more life presented things beyond his control. His children grew and made choices he would not have made. His body changed in ways no amount of planning could prevent. The world shifted in directions he could not have predicted. And one evening, sitting alone in the house he had built, he felt it. The tiredness that sleep could not fix. Not because he had failed, but because he had succeeded at something that was never meant to be permanent. He had built a life, but he had not learned how to live it. Control is not the problem, exactly. We all need some measure of it to navigate daily life. We plan, we organize, we make decisions. This is part of being human. The problem is when control becomes the only strategy we know. When holding on becomes so habitual that we forget there is another way. When the fist stays clenched so long that we forget the hand can open. When the managing becomes more important than the living. What anxiety really is. Let us speak honestly about worry. Not to analyze it. Not to solve it. Just to look at it, clearly, the way you might look at an old piece of furniture you have walked past 1,000 times without really seeing. Worry has a particular quality. It is always about something that has not happened yet. Think about that for a moment. Let it settle. every anxious thought, every sleepless night spent rehearsing conversations that may never occur, every tight feeling in the chest about outcomes still unknown. All of it is pointed toward a future that does not yet exist. We worry about the diagnosis we have not received. We worry about the phone call that has not come. We worry about the loss that has not happened. We worry about the failure that exists only in imagination. The mind has a remarkable ability to create vivid images of what might go wrong. It can build entire scenarios, complete with dialogue and consequences. It can construct disasters in exquisite detail. It can make the imagined feel as real as the actual. And the body believes it. The heart races. The breath shortens. The muscles tense. The stomach tightens. The jaw clenches. All in response to something that is not happening. Not here. Not now. Only in the mind's projection. Only in the story we are telling ourselves. This is not a flaw in human nature. It is a survival mechanism that evolved over thousands of years. The ability to anticipate danger kept our ancestors alive. The human who could imagine the tiger hiding in the grass was more likely to survive than the one who could not. But somewhere along the way, the mechanism began to overreach. It started anticipating dangers that were not physical. What if I lose my job? What if they do not approve of me? What if I made the wrong choice 30 years ago? What if my children struggle? What if my health fails? What if I end up alone? And the body, unable to distinguish between a real threat and an imagined one, responded as if the danger were present. As if the tiger were really there. When there was no tiger at all. Only thought. There is a teaching, simple and ancient, that offers a different way. It does not ask you to stop thinking. It does not ask you to pretend everything is fine. It does not dismiss your concerns or minimize your fears. It simply invites you back. Back to this moment. This breath. This heartbeat. This room. This body, sitting or lying down, exactly as it is right now. When you return to the present, something subtle shifts. The future loses some of its weight. Not because the challenges disappear, but because you are no longer living in them before they arrive. You are here. And here, in this very moment, you are okay. You are breathing. You are alive. The worst has not happened, because the future has not happened. Only now is it happening. And now, despite everything the mind might say, it is survivable. It is always survivable. Because you are already surviving it. The shrinking world. Worry does something else, too. Something we do not often notice until we look back at years gone by. Something subtle and slow, like erosion. It shrinks the world. Think of all the things you might have tried but did not. The conversations you might have started. The places you might have visited. The words you might have spoken. The love you might have offered more freely. The risks you might have taken. The dreams you might have followed. How many of those unlived moments were held back by worry? By the fear of what might go wrong. By the need to know the outcome before taking the first step. Worry tells us to play it safe. To stay where we are. To keep our hearts guarded. To wait for certainty before we act. And certainty, as we have learned by now, rarely comes. Life does not offer guarantees. It offers moments, one after another, each one an invitation. So we wait. And while we wait, life continues. The seasons change. The children grow. The years pass. The hair turns gray. The face changes in the mirror. And one day, we look back and wonder where the time went. Wonder what we were so afraid of. Wonder what might have been. There is no blame in this. Only recognition. A gentle seeing of what has been. Not with regret, but with understanding. And perhaps, a quiet wondering about what might still be possible. Because the story is not over yet. There are still pages to be written. Still moments to be lived. Still love to be offered. If these words are offering you a moment of stillness, a small clearing in the noise of daily life, you might consider staying with this journey. The channel Buddha Coha was created for moments like this. A quiet space for reflection. For those who are not looking for answers, but for a little more peace in the questions. If that resonates with you, a subscription, a like, or a share helps others find their way here, too. The courage of letting go. There is a common misunderstanding about letting go. It sounds like giving up, like defeat, like no longer caring, like walking away. But that is not what it is. Letting go is not the absence of caring. It is caring without gripping, loving without clutching, doing your best without needing to control the outcome. It is perhaps the bravest thing a person can do. Imagine, for a moment, planting a seed. You prepare the soil. You place the seed gently in the ground. You water it. You have done everything within your power. And then you wait. You do not dig it up every day to check if it is growing. You do not stand over it, demanding it sprout on your schedule. You do not lie awake worrying about whether it will bloom. You trust. You trust the soil, the water, the sun. The unseen processes happening beneath the surface. You have done your part. Now life does its part. This is what letting go looks like. Not abandoning responsibility, but releasing the illusion that everything depends on your constant vigilance. It is an act of profound bravery, because it asks you to live with uncertainty, to tolerate not knowing, to make peace with the fact that you cannot protect everyone you love from everything that might happen, to accept that you are not the master of the universe, only a guest in it. And here is the strange paradox. When you stop trying to control everything, something opens. Space, breath, possibility. The energy you were using to manage, monitor, and predict becomes available for something else. For creativity, for connection, for joy, for actually living the life that is happening, rather than defending against the life that might. The world does not fall apart when you loosen your grip. It opens up. The river and the stone. There is an old story about a river and a stone. Perhaps you have heard some version of it before. The river flows, as rivers do, over rocks, around bends, through valleys. It does not argue with the landscape. It does not stop and demand that the mountain move out of its way. It does not rage against the obstacles in its path. It simply flows. And over time, through patience and persistence, the water shapes the stone. Not through force. Not through fighting. Through presence. Through showing up, day after day, century after century. Through gentle, continuous becoming. Now imagine a stone that decides it must control the river. It braces itself. It resists. It fights the current. It tenses against the flow. What happens? The stone does not stop the river. The river continues, indifferent to the stone's struggle. And the stone? It wears itself down. Exhausts itself. Becomes smaller not through graceful shaping, but through friction and resistance. It fights a battle it can never win. Against an opponent that is not even fighting back. We have all been that stone at times. Bracing against what is. Fighting the current of life. Insisting that things should be different from what they are. Resisting the flow of time, of change, of circumstances beyond our control. And we have felt the wearing down that comes from that resistance. The exhaustion. The frustration. The quiet despair of trying to hold back the river. But we have also been the water. In those moments when we stopped fighting. When we let ourselves flow around the obstacle instead of through it. When we surrendered, not to defeat, but to life's larger movement. In those moments, something eased. Something aligned. And life, instead of feeling like a battle, began to feel like a dance. A dance we did not have to lead. A dance that was leading us, if only we would let it. The wisdom of trees. Walk through any forest that has been standing for 100 years. Or even longer. Look at the trees. Really look at them. They have weathered storms you cannot imagine. They have survived droughts, floods, and fires. They have stood through wars and peace and everything in between. And yet, they do not carry the weight of all those years. They are simply here. Present. Alive. They do not worry about the coming winter. They do not argue with the autumn when it asks them to release their leaves. They do not hold on to what is ready to fall. They let go. Leaf by leaf. Without resistance. Without regret. And in that letting go, they do not die. They rest. They conserve. They trust that spring will come, as it always has. The trees have no philosophy about this. They do not meditate on impermanence. They do not read books about acceptance. They simply live it. Each year, a letting go. Each year, a return. Not because they have figured out the secret of life, but because they have not complicated it. We, with our remarkable minds, have the ability to complicate things beautifully. We can turn simple truths into endless debates. We can make easy things difficult. We can convince ourselves that letting go is dangerous, that control is necessary, that worry is productive. We can think our way into suffering that does not need to exist. And the trees stand there, silent, dropping their leaves anyway. Not judging. Not teaching. Just being. Perhaps there is something to learn from that silence. Not a lesson to be grasped and implemented. Just a presence to be noticed. An invitation to remember what we already know, somewhere beneath all the thinking. That life has its own rhythm. Those seasons change without our permission. That letting go is not an ending. It is making room for what comes next. The space that opens. When you release your grip, even slightly, something interesting happens. You begin to notice things you were too busy to see before. The way light falls through a window in the late afternoon. The sound of rain on a roof. The face of someone you love, really seen, not just glanced at. The quiet miracle of your own breathing, happening without any effort on your part. The color of the sky at dusk. The smell of coffee in the morning. The feeling of a hand in yours. Worry is loud. It fills the mind with its urgent narration. It drowns out the subtler sounds of life. It demands attention. It insists on importance. It leaves no room for wonder. But when worry quiets, even for a moment, the world becomes larger, richer, more textured, full of small miracles we had stopped noticing. This is not about becoming passive. It is not about drifting through life without intention. It is about discovering a different kind of engagement. One that is responsive rather than reactive. One that meets each moment as it comes, rather than defending against moments that have not arrived. One that trusts life enough to participate in it fully. There is a phrase that captures this beautifully. To be present. Not present in the sense of a gift. Present in the sense of being here. Fully here. With whatever is happening. Not wishing it were different. Not rushing toward what comes next. Not lost in what came before. Just here. And when you are here, truly here, something remarkable becomes clear. This moment is enough. Not because it is perfect. Not because there is no pain or difficulty. But because it is real. It is what it is. And there is a strange peace in simply being with what is, without needing it to be otherwise. A peace that has been there all along, waiting for you to stop, to breathe, to notice. Life begins to flow. The title of this reflection contains a word that might be misunderstood. When you stop caring. It does not mean becoming indifferent. It does not mean shutting down your heart. It does not mean walking away from responsibility or love. It means something more subtle. Stopping the obsessive caring that comes from fear. The caring that is really control in disguise. The caring that exhausts rather than nourishes. The caring that drains rather than fills. When that kind of caring loosens its grip, life does not fall apart. Quite the opposite. Life begins to flow. Not because you have figured out the secret. Not because you have reached some elevated state. But because you have stopped fighting the current. You have stopped insisting that the river bend to your will. You have allowed yourself to move with life, rather than against it. And in that flow, opportunities appear that you could not have planned. Connections that you could not have predicted. Solutions arise that you could not have forced. A kind of ease enters daily life. Not the ease of having no problems. But the ease of not adding to the struggle. Not piling worry on top of difficulty. Not fighting against what is already here. The old teachers called this trust. Not to trust in a particular outcome. Don't trust that everything will go the way you want. But trust in life itself. In its unfolding. In its mysterious wisdom. In its capacity to bring you what you need, even when it does not bring you what you asked for. This trust is not naive. It is earned. Earned through years of watching life unfold in ways you could not have predicted. Earned through surviving everything that has come before. Earned through the simple fact that you are still here. Coming home. There is nothing you need to do with any of this. No practice to implement. No belief to adopt. No goal to achieve. This is simply an invitation to notice. To notice the moments when you are gripping. To notice the tiredness that comes from holding on. To notice what happens, even briefly, when you let go. You have lived long enough to know that life does not follow your plans. That the things you worried about most often did not happen. That the things that did happen were often things you never saw coming. And yet, here you are. Having survived everything so far. Having made it through losses and changes you once thought would break you. Still breathing. Still here. Still capable of laughter and love and wonder. Perhaps that is worth noticing. Not as a reason for false optimism, but as a simple fact. You have navigated decades of uncertainty. You have adapted to countless changes. You have let go of more than you realize. And you are still here. Still capable of peace. Still capable of presence. Still capable of opening the hand that has been clenched for so long. The quiet that you sometimes notice in the early morning. That peace that exists before the thinking begins. It has not gone anywhere. It is still there. Underneath the worry. Underneath the planning. Underneath the need to control. Waiting. Patient. Like the stillness at the bottom of a lake, undisturbed by the ripples on the surface. Like the silence behind all sound. Like the space that holds everything. You do not have to create that peace. You only have to stop covering it up. And maybe that is enough for today. Not a resolution. Not a transformation. Not a dramatic change. Just a small loosening. A slight opening of the hand. A moment of remembering that you do not have to carry everything. That life has its own intelligence. That letting go is not a loss. It is a kind of homecoming. A return to something you never really left. A remembering of what you have always known. Thank you for staying with these words until the end. For taking this time not to be fixed or improved, but simply to be here, with whatever you are feeling and thinking. If you would like to continue this journey of quiet reflection, the Buddha Coha channel will be here. New reflections each week. No pressure. No promises. Just a place to rest for a while. Subscribe if you like. Ring the bell if you want to be reminded. Or simply come back whenever you need a moment of stillness. Either way, thank you. For listening. For being here. For everything you carry, and for everything you are learning to release. The morning will come again tomorrow. And in that small space before the world begins its demands, the quiet will be there. Waiting. It always is. It always has been. And it always will be.